Oh, is it us?
We're live.
Have it on. Have it on.
Happy.
Is there anyone else on?
Happy good evening. Happy good morning, wherever you might be. Simple test with regard to things like audio tonight. I'm actually using my machine, which traditionally has been very not unreliable as far as audio as things concerned. So if you come on and you are able to... Hi John, can you hear us loud and clear in Adelaide? It's a bit like, this is the BBC. Can you hear us loud and clear in Adelaide? We're just doing an audio test before we get cracking here. And we're in the cool green room tonight. We've had 37 degrees today. And I think other parts of Australia are probably experiencing the same sort of issues with regard to heat and what have you. And Maryland, probably extremely warm in central Australia today, but the humidity's been very high. And we've been actually in pools of perspiration for much of the day. Hi Ed, how are you my friend? Lovely to have you aboard. Marilyn, yeah, g'day, and Gemma, hello and good evening.
Clare Darwish is on, look. And
Clare Darwish is on. Oh, you're in two places at once, how extraordinary. I just wanted to check, I know my voice is, I've got a little bit of volume in my voice, but can you guys hear us loud and clear? Just give us a thumbs up, that would be really appreciated. Tonight we wanted to talk about things that are sort of a little bit outside awesome, a little bit outside the health and nutrition. 40 degrees in Central Australia. Oh, I remember it got to 45 in Alice Springs many years ago. It was so dry that your skin would burst and would start bleeding around your nose here. It would start bleeding. So you've got that to look forward to. Yes, got NBN fixed, Ed. Thanks very much indeed. We've been up for 2 weeks now, I think, and I haven't really noticed any major change, but we did do a speed test the other night, and I think we were getting about 30 in and about 16 out, which is pretty good going.
Yeah, well, last week at this time the image was quite fuzzy, wasn't it? And then it
settled down a lot.
So
yeah.
Hopefully it's nice and clear tonight.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So we're genuinely happy with the transition. We had to go with our Telstra mates, but anyway, that's what it's like in the countryside, and it's cool. Clarity is great. I like clarity. So we want to talk tonight about some of the things that people have been asking us to talk about, because as you guys know, we often slip into conversation really weird bits of information, or we make comments about things which definitely aren't mainstream. And they're things that both Claire and I participate in almost on a daily basis at the moment, from the point of view of bringing our knowledge up to speed, and really sheeting home this very real truth that the whole system is falling down. And I wanted tonight to focus a little bit more on this issue of the commoditization of humanity and the corporatization of our food. During the week we have seen a couple of really great Netflix movies. One, and it's a series actually, a series of television docos. One called Rotten and the other called Dirty Money. So if you've got Netflix and you haven't seen them yet, I really urge you to look at Dirty Money first off. The first one up was actually about Volkswagen's emission fraud. And it's so well put together, this whole thing. They interview everybody, and it's quite balanced the way it puts out. And they're even interviewing people. One guy who was put away for 17 years for basically defrauding people on the back of a loan shark type thing. He was spending his money on racing cars and all sorts of things in the US. And the other one is Rotten, and Rotten deals with some of the fraud that goes on in the food business. Now, I know many years ago, and probably many of you don't know this, but I worked with my brother in New Zealand, Matthias Meats New Zealand Limited, and that was before I woke up to what was going on, and it was a means to an end at the time. But the meat industry is not so much fraud, but there's the old story, you know, you go to the butcher shop and just watch that his thumb's not on the scales, you know, just to put an extra couple of grams on. And I sincerely hope you don't go to the butcher shop any longer. But for some strange reason, that's an industry that's fraught with how to describe? It's not like deceit. Deceit's probably the
There's potential for deceit.
well, there's potential for deceit, but there's all sorts of things going on there. But the rotten series, the ones we saw were about garlic coming out of China, the maple syrup industry in Canada, and what was the third one?
Honey.
And honey. My God, I mean, here you go. You've got two things that we've got the bee thing, and you've got the maple tree thing, and then you've got garlic, and the things that they're getting up to in order to actually protect their business and their industry is phenomenal. Now, you know, this is in one particular case one garlic exporter from China, and I've seen their product here in Australia. It's actually bleached. It's white garlic, and they bleach it to actually kill off any bugs on it and to get uniformity of color. And that chlorine bleach actually goes into the garlic. But the biggest thing that they showed was the prisons in this particular area where this garlic is grown, the prisoners actually have to manually strip the skin, the dry skin off the garlic, 20 kilos a day. And these guys' fingernails are falling out and actually putting bits of garlic in their mouth to actually crack open the garlic clove and things like that.
Because the demand for peeled garlic in the United States is absolutely huge. It's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. So in China, they're getting the prisoners to do this work, which is obviously another questionable.
You can't use
human rights abuse.
Actually, you can't actually technically use garments or food or anything that's been actually processed or handled by prisoners. That's illegal apparently in the United States, but this company just denied it. But they've got a $100 million industry to protect, $100 million trade in both whole unpeeled corms and the peeled clove of garlic to protect. So it was pretty full on.
So Paul's just joined us. Hi Paul. Good to see you.
Yeah, lovely, all the way from cold Scotland. 37 degrees today here, Paul. Melting stuff. And we're in the aircon little office thing here. We brought some greenery in, and we thought we'd have the sound of birds chirping, but they're all asleep. Gemma says that she's enjoyed Rotten. It was great, great to watch. And the other ones too, yeah, the maple syrup, the honey, and the garlic. They're three. I think there are others in there, but that's all we're up to at the moment.
And Peanuts was the other one.
Oh, Peanuts.
Which was fantastic. Brilliant programme.
And
I think what I liked about it was that the documentary makers have actually somehow managed to interview both parties, so the goodies and the baddies, and you were seeing it from both, from the two perspectives. But the reason it's interesting to us is because last week we started to talk about the corruption and the amount of corruption that's on the planet. Not only in the food industry, which is absolutely massive, and I would disagree with you, Scott, about the meat industry, because I don't think there's any industry, certainly at the corporate level, that isn't corrupted. And also...
Well, with the meat industry over the years, there's been scandals with regard to product replacement.
Yeah.
At one point, they were putting horse meat into cartons of beef, for instance. And that's a classic. And that happened out of Australia. They were rounding up brumbies out west here and slaughtering them and actually carving up the meat and putting it into a box and calling it beef, manufacturing beef for our burgers in America.
Yeah.
So there's also all sorts of things. And Tesco in the UK was taken to task maybe 2 or 3 years ago when horse meat was found in some of their burgers. Paul Kenyon just happens to be Claire's brother, and he says it's snowing at the moment, which is quite remarkable. Everything, Paul, here at the moment, just so green. We had a massive storm yesterday afternoon, and we got a big downpour of rain. The tanks filled up nicely, which is really, really cool. Karen says hi from Perth, and Sarah, good morning from London.
Hello, Karen in Perth, and Sarah in London.
Yeah, Sarah's actually a Kiwi from Taupo, interestingly enough. Just
I've been there.
Yes, you have.
Yes, uh-huh.
Yeah, you have been there. So we're really lucky in some respects not to have it so cold here, but today was melter. Today the humidity was extremely high. But all that aside, I wanted to, we'll talk more about the meat business, we'll talk more about the food business shortly, but we are seen, human beings are seen basically as commodities. We are essentially dispensable. We're targets for the corporations, and you can gather lots of information online about the way the algorithms are being set up with anybody from Amazon to Facebook to Instagram and what have you, how they're beginning to target people specific to their needs or to their commentary. There's even some discussion right now that through the means of the microphone on the machine, that people, whoever they are, can hear conversations. It's funny that we can have certain thoughts about a product or a book or a subject matter, and then all of a sudden you start seeing ads turn up in your Facebook news thread and things like that. And that is happening to people more and more. I remember years and years ago working in the consulting industry where, in fact, we began to talk about the demographic thing begins to shrink down to individual needs. And then they started to develop algorithms which did begin to identify the behavior of the potential customer and then pitching advertising to that particular person. So we're seen basically as objects. We're not seen as sentient beings in our own right. We are seen as objects to essentially squeeze as much money out of as possible in order for profits to ensue. Now, I'm not talking out of line here. This is how business operates. This is how any business operates at that particular level. Small business, basically, I think, will be dead and gone in the space of 30 to 40 years, if we're lucky. In fact, it might even be sooner. I mean, we identified in our small foray, short foray into retail, how the retail model is changing dramatically to such an extent that costs associated with actually running a small business are extremely high on a per dollar revenue compared to the bigger business. Now, you might say that's economy of scale, but you're looking at tax breaks that the corporations get that the small business doesn't get, because those corporations do employ people. And in several cases, of course, or in a number of cases, and I refer to sickness as being a big money spinner out of my Understanding the Divine Gut book. Johnson & Johnson is the largest, this is 2009, I've actually updated in the revised version, which I'm working on. And they, in fact, they have a net profit of 12 billion, so close to 13 billion a year. And I would suggest that at this particular time, it's a lot higher. And they have over probably 120,000 employees. So therefore, those employees are paying tax. So that in itself is an asset. So you've got to look after the company. But that's to the detriment of small business, and that's to the detriment of us as well. Now, by the way, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask, and we will just throw it around. And I think if you put a question in the thread and someone else has got an idea about how to make things work, we don't have all the answers to everything, but someone else might. So basically what is happening, the sickness industry turns over billions of dollars worth of services and pharmaceuticals. I think the basis of it, without any word of a lie, is the model, which goes right back into the GP's surgery, which is diagnose and prescribe, diagnose and prescribe. It also goes back into the hospital environment as well. And a friend recently who we spoke about on a live transmission last year, who suffered from a stroke, and that was about diagnosis and prescription, to the point that what happened, his system became totally overloaded with drugs, with pharmaceuticals. He developed chronic reflux, steadiness, unsteady on his feet, dizziness and things like that. And he was actually, his intake was reduced considerably. He subsequently made very, very good progress, and he's home now, and he went and visited his local GP recently, who looked at the list of pharmaceuticals he was on, and the GP immediately cut that in half. So it's good to see that there's a degree of common sense and logic being applied to the way these things are dispensed, because it's also easy for the medical community just to dispense a drug. And they go to university, by the way, just to learn what drugs match what conditions, or what drugs actually match what symptoms or issues might exist. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go and visit a doctor for fear of getting pharmaceuticals, because there is a place for all of this. But what we're seeing is we've seen a growth in an industry that is multi-billion. So Johnson & Johnson are the largest, and this is from a book, the largest company in the United States. They turn over close to 70 billion annually. And as I mentioned, they have a net profit of around about 13 billion annually. Pfizer's the next one. They turn over about 48 billion. GlaxoSmithKline, 44. Now, these figures are a few years out of date, so my guess is that they would have increased, and we'll see that turn up in the next edition of this book. But these profits, by the way, are actually linked. So there's a linkage here. They're actually linked to what I believe are avoidable conditions which actually present themselves in the human body as a result of poor nutrition. We're going to talk about the banks, by the way. We're going to talk about the banks. We're going to talk about other things which are emerging in society at the moment, which are being questioned very, very openly, because people are really hanging out for the truth. There's no two ways about it. So these profits are actually very, very clearly linked to things like Lipitor, Nexium. Now, Lipitor is a cholesterol drug. Some of you have probably heard about that. Nexium is a very, very common.
Statin, is it?
No, the Lipitor is a statin. The Nexium basically is a proton pump inhibitor, and that's designed about trying to stop the production of hydrochloric acid in the stomach, because some guy came up with this idea because there's too much acid. Well, the question I ask is, if there's too much acid or there's too little acid, go fix the cause of that. Why actually try and cause all sorts of other issues? Because Nexium will affect the liver, breaks down the liver over a period of time. And by the way, everything I'm talking about here, you can go online and you can search for this information. It's all there. I found it over a period of a couple of years that all this information is there and it's available. One of the quotes that I've got here is from GlaxoSmithKline employee and whistleblower Blair Hamrick. And together with his colleague Gregory Thorpe, they blew the whistle on criminal practices taking place inside GlaxoSmithKline, and that led to one of the largest criminal admissions and financial settlements ever to actually emerge from the human chemical industry, the pharmaceutical industry. And GSK were forced to pay something like $3 billion fine while pleading guilty to other felony charges.
Yeah, but what percentage of their profits is $3 billion?
No, it's nothing. Over a period of time, $3 billion is nothing. So that information is there. I guess what I'm saying is that the other thing is that the pharmaceutical companies have very, very neatly managed to lobby their way into governments around the world, and that's where they see their strength, because the medical system in Australia, through the Therapeutic Goods Association, where every pharmaceutical has to be registered and allegedly goes through very stringent testing to detect any impacts that pharmaceutical might have on the body of the human being. And I say allegedly because it occurs in America with the FDA as well. And there are drugs which are available in America that haven't been tested on humans, but they're now freely available because they're fast-tracking these things. The lobbying power that the pharmaceutical companies spend, and they spend something like 150, 200 million a year on lobbying governments, on lobbying politicians, on lobbying state senators and members of Congress in the United States. Hi, Brian. Lovely to have you. I don't know if you're still in New Zealand, but good on you. Both Carol and Ed have talked about the drugs that their parents and grandparents have prescribed. And yeah, I mean, it's a shocker. How do I begin to say that? There is another generation that really will just do anything that the doctor says. Or if the doctor says, oh, well, this drug here, but you're going to need to take this one in order to counter the effects of that one, and you're also going to need to take this one once a day to counter effect the ones that it's been designed to counter effect the original one, things like that. And those scenarios exist. That's how bizarre this whole can of worms is. So, Simon, you talk about the number of people that have already reached the safety net with prescription prescriptions this year is horrifying, and it's only February. Can you explain a little bit more? Is this a monthly allowance? Because I don't know subscriptions. I just know that we see little cars, even in this area here, coming from the local pharmacy with bags full of prescriptions being taken into somebody's house. And that's just one of a number of deliveries that particular pharmacy will make that afternoon. So one assumes that that threshold or that safety net with regard to prescriptions is dollar related, or it could be individual pharmaceutically related. But anyway, if you could throw some light onto that, Simone, that'd be really appreciated. So the question arises is how much of what you're doing without question now? And that's the question. That's the question I'm asking you. How much are you doing that you're doing without question now? My personal position is I question everything, and I mean I'm not orthorexic, which is that word that we learnt in integrated nutrition back in 2011, where you have such an overzealous preoccupation with good health. We're not. We're absolutely not. We seem to have just slotted into a zone on a daily basis that has our antennae up, watching and listening basically for anything which comes our way that's the antithesis of truth, and it has an energy about it. You can feel it, can't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely feel it.
The connections are all starting to appear now. So with more and more people becoming aware of the damage that long-term pharmaceutical drugs causes to the body, there's a lot of concern from people who have elderly parents, and they have these little, boxes with
the pill containers,
pill containers, and all they want to do is see mum and dad or gran and grandpa feel better. But what's linking all of this together, from our perspective, or certainly from my perspective, is corruption. And it's at a very, very high level. Now, we can feel that, people sense that, and it creates a stress on us anyway, because we know it's happening. We can see, we read about the scandals, we hear about them, and the people at the top just seem to get away with, in some cases, blue murder. And so why are those people behaving that way when the majority of us, I would say the majority of people on the planet, have compassion, and they have empathy, and they want to be well, and they are happy to share and things like that? So what's the disconnect? And we've been watching a lot of these programs and trying to, having discussions. You mentioned earlier about the discussion. Sometimes they're arguments, but they're very worthwhile and very enjoyable. And we always say we should have recorded that while we were talking, because once we go
we have some
on a particular street, then that's it.
It's really, we share really good content with each other, if you look at it that way.
But at the bottom of it all is greed. It's greed that drives these people to do these things. And that greed is, or that desire for more and more is, I think, in a way, it shows that they feel they're lacking. And that sense of lacking
as individuals,
is painful. It's painful.
Yeah.
So it comes back to the human emotions, and we get angry. We can get angry witnessing this and saying this is not fair, and it's quite criminal, and nobody's doing anything about it. But we know that corruption exists, and it always has, and it probably always will. But it goes from government level, federal level, to state level, to local level. It's always going on, certainly in my lifetime. And of course, in the last 10 years, things have been blown open in the banking sector. Mm-hmm. And I think in a weird way that's been a bonus, because it's really helping people right now, today in 2018, to open their eyes and ask questions. And it's something that I've been doing for a long time, because I've been into the conspiracy theories for years and years and years, and they would drive you nuts. But also,
guess what? They're all coming true.
Well, 10 years on, 10 or 12 years on now, I'm much more calm about it, much more at peace with it because I'm looking at it from a different angle. I've kind of gone through the 5 stages of grief where, you know, first of all, you just don't believe it, and there are still some people who do not believe that there's corruption at this level. It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. You just pick up a newspaper or switch on the main news at night. It's everywhere. So that's something that's affecting humanity on a global scale. The question is, how do we change it? How do we change it? Because we get angry, we want to go out and you know, wave a flag, march. Some people are getting quite aggressive and causing damage and things like that. Now that's happened for years as well, but it doesn't help. So what can we do to reconcile with this and create a way to bring the game back to the level that it should be at, where there is integrity, there's honesty, there's compassion, and there's empathy for one another, for humanity. Now, the food is connected. There's no doubt about it. That the food that we're eating, most of the food that we're eating, unfortunately, has been sprayed to within an inch of its life. So unless we're eating clean, organic food, and we know where it's come from, then most of our chances are a bit slimmer.
So you're saying basically that even by going to organic food, organic produce, for instance, that you're supporting the organic grower who is not participating in the Monsanto craziness, which means that if more and more people actually supported organic, paid the few extra dollars, invested in their health, and saw it as an investment in their health, what would happen is that the traditional farmers would be forced to actually integrate more organic product, organic production, and choose not to use the herbicides and the insecticides and things. So that's the first thing.
That's the first thing. So the other day I had to go into Woolworths to go into there, and it was just so evident to me there was this tiny little space for organic produce, and they had some sweet corn there and some courgettes and a few bits and pieces, not a huge choice, right? And then the rest of that whole fruit and veg section was full of fruit and vegetable. They looked great, prices were much lower, they were half the price of the organic foods, and yet all of those foods have travelled long distances. They've all been sprayed and gassed and goodness knows what, and because we're all on a budget, everybody's buying that now.
False economy? Across the board,
the
not just in
ideal
dollar
scenario
terms.
would be to reverse that and have all of that food, all of the food that was out there, organic. But because the corporations are so focusing solely on profit, because they've got to give the shareholders a return. So this comes back to us again. Are we investing in companies that are involved in dubious practices? We have to question that. Do we put our money into a mutual fund and we don't really know where that's going, where it's being invested? It might be being invested in the tobacco industry. It might be invested in pharmaceuticals.
That's if you're not wise to the options, and you can actually go to an ethical fund now and actually clearly delineate where you want your money spent.
Yeah, but the point that I wanted to make was the fact that we have the power, because it's the consumer that drives the market from the corporation's point of view. Now, there's another point with that, because one of my sons said to me recently, Mum, I'll just buy whatever's on offer. I'm not going to go in and ask specifically for things. I'll just buy whatever's there. So the corporations have got free range. They can just put down whatever they want. They can package it nicely, make it look as if it's healthy and it's got all these vitamins in it and all the rest of it. But we know that anything that's processed is dead. It's dead food. And people are putting that into their bodies.
But in the transport issue, the food degrades over the space of days from the moment it's picked.
Yeah.
You know, so there's very little. Can I just interrupt you for a sec? Stay with that. It's very, very important. Has the corruption worsened with the internet and social media? From Lindsay. Lindsay, well, you're probably going to say what I'm going to say. What are you going to say? Well, I'm going to say is that because of the internet and social media, we're actually getting to find out more about the corruption.
People are more aware of it.
People are more aware of it,
There.
so people are talking about it, and it's always been there for forever and a day. It's always been there. So that's the first question. The other one is the vitamins industry and the prescription of vitamins. Yes, I mean, I have it with unscrupulous naturopaths who actually picked up the model from the allopathic general practitioners who will overprescribe vitamins rather than actually prescribe a healthy food intake. So they'll go in, the people pay $150 for a naturopathic consultation, and then walk out with $300 or $400 worth of vitamins that the body cannot identify or cannot cope with. And we've talked about this before. Okay, the body is not finite in its ability to process nutritional information. If you put too much of the wrong information into the body, then what happens is you blue screen. I mean, it's like information going into the laptop here, that if you put too many commands into it, it will blue screen. You will go into a state of seizure, and your pee turns lime green or some other amazing color, because you're just basically urinating that out of the system. But in the meantime, you're putting your liver, your gallbladder, your pancreas, your digestive metabolism under tremendous stress. I'm a great believer in actually ease and grace and just using natural ways to rehabilitate the body rather than hitting it hard and shocking it, basically. Go with the flow, hop into nature's flow here. Melinda's just mentioned also that she lives in Lismore, and of course there's wonderful farmers markets around the place, and there are locally here too, but this is not the case everywhere on the planet. And we've come across farmers who are allegedly selling kosher vegetables and fruit, what have you, but of course they purchased at the market in Brisbane and brought it up here. Well, so some of that fruit's come out of Victoria.
You need to be kind of brave and just ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question, you know, what do you use? Because some people will spray, some farmers will spray the soil but not the tree, not the fruit, and others will spray the fruit but not the soil. So it's a quagmire really of confusion, and it doesn't help. You
raised another question with regard to confusion. Jeannie's asked, can we allocate where our superannuation money is invested? Yes,
well, we should be able to. Absolutely.
You can. Certain funds are able to do that. If you're just going to buy an off-the-shelf super fund from, who's the crowd in Brisbane?
Suncorp.
From Suncorp or somebody like that. But you can actually demand an ethical spread of your funds as to where you want them to spend, like no coal, involved in renewable energies, wind energy, thermal energy, and things like that. And that's an interesting point. Now, the interesting thing is, Ed's posted pictures in the last couple of weeks, haven't you, mate, with regard to some of the shopping that you've been doing at local markets. And in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, markets are popping up everywhere. They are popping up everywhere as people are demanding more access to the farmers. To remove the anonymity between them and the origin of the food. When you begin to identify the origin of your food, you automatically have an energetic relationship with the land that food was grown on, and in particularly the food that you're going to ingest. So the consequences are already beginning to be quite powerful. So wherever you can, do the farmers market, which is really cool. Wei, thanks for joining us tonight. I've got some news for you, which we'll talk about shortly. How far are we into it? We're about half an hour in. So another 15 minutes or so, we've got some more news, which is really fab, which we've been working on all day today. And surprisingly enough, we haven't melted. So just coming back to this thing about the corporatization of our food and the role of pharmaceuticals. It's a lark. It's a lark. Money being raised for cancer research is another lark. You've got the Susan, what's her name? Lady in America?
I don't know.
Susan Kogan or Susan Kang, I can't remember the name. And they've been found out, and that's one of the jobs that Kip Anderson undertakes in What the Health. So that's the other movie, if you haven't seen What the Health, because only small percentage of their actual donations are used for any sort of research or for research grants. Very high percentages actually go on the administration involved in these organizations like the American Cancer Society. I think the CEO of the American Cancer Society is earning $400,000 or some crazy figure. I'm not going to be quoted, but it is an abnormally high figure. Now the other thing too is just, are we making progress with regard to the information around particularly cancer research and the impact of that? I put it down to this, that the best cancer research you can do is really simple. Go online right now, find out where your nearest farmer's market is this weekend, seek out an organic farmer and begin to purchase clean organic food. And that's the best research that you can actually undertake. And your body will actually begin to feel so much better within a short time. Claire, you had a conversation with a gentleman today.
Yes, I did.
Do you want to just talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, lovely guy, one of our neighbours, who works in hospital, local hospital here, and he's a wardsman. And we were talking, he was passing over some lovely mangoes, and I was passing back some citrus, some limes.
Early citrus.
Little tangerines. And we're having a chat. Now, he was telling me that his mum died at the age of 67 from a stroke. So he said, that's in my genes. And it was kind of, that's it, it's a done deal, it's in my genes. And he said, my problem is... Because
that's what the doctor said, it's in your genes, but we're bio, you know, what are we? We're individual, bio-individuals. It's not in our genes. And people are going, oh, gene. No, too much has been made of this stuff. It's not in our genes.
It's a genetic.
Yeah, well, that's an abrogation of your responsibility. You're going to hand the responsibility for your long-term health and healing to a statistic or to somebody else who believes that this is the case, when in fact it's not the case.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So he knows that his diet needs to be changed, but at the moment he can't give up meat. So yesterday he was telling me he stopped buying TV dinners and heating them up. So because it's processed food, and processed food is bad. So that's good. That's good news. But he had chops for breakfast, steak for lunch, and chops for tea. So he takes the fresh meat in and he cooks it and what have you. And I said, so what about fruit and veg? How much do you eat? He said, nah, I just like my meat. Now his wife's beautiful soul, and she was, it's one step at a time. And I said, yeah, that's it, just to increase the fruit and veg and decrease the amount of meat until you gradually, your taste buds change. There's not an awful lot you can do about that when people just have that mindset. But we're talking to people every week who are obviously looking for answers. So that's why we're addressing these things. Because the people who are on here, and it's great to see the same people coming on every week. It's wonderful. Plug in for his books.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, people say, how do I produce the food? How do I make it? What is the recipe? It's really
it is simple. But again, the change has to take place in the mind, number one. So we have to have a strong enough desire. And sometimes for people it is a serious illness that creates that motivation. It's a negative motivator, but at least it does bring people's attention to the forefront. Using food as medicine is the quickest, easiest way by far to heal your body, without a doubt. Right? Yeah. So there's lots of, in fact, that movie that Wei Shen's reading, How Not to Die, Dr. Michael Greger, fantastic guy, fantastic book. We're always sharing his information, so it's good to see that you're reading his book.
So there are some medical doctors who are coming out and agreeing with this. Dr. Milton Mills says.
And What the Health documentary is another one that you'll get on Netflix, and Cowspiracy, talking about the damage that animal agriculture is doing to the planet. What the Health, the damage that pharmaceuticals are doing to our body. So it's right there, it's right in front of us, it's over the fence, and we just do our best to try and encourage people, those who are interested, to point them in the right direction. So that kind of brings us back to we'll come back to the monetary thing again in a minute, but that brings us
Can
back
we just talk about the monetary thing in the context of prescriptions? So the Purdue family created the OxyContin, Ed, which you know about, and because of the number of deaths which have occurred as a result of OxyContin prescription in the United States, even President Trump has climbed into that whole thing, and the family or the companies agreed not to sell direct to doctors, but they haven't actually said, look, our drug's responsible for suicides and things like that, because they'd be facing a class action. But that in itself is a very good sign. I mean, when a leader such as our friend the Donald says, look, this is out of control, we have to do something, in his very simplistic way, he's managed to throw light onto an issue in the United States, which the other politicians have just swept under the mat. Do you know why? Because it's all about money. I get my fingers going here. It's all about the donations that they get. They will zip up their lips and say nothing if they're actually getting a donation. Ada talks about the Mediterranean diet. And there's a lot to be said about the Mediterranean diet.
Well, it's said to be the healthiest diet.
The healthiest diet, you know, it has a good balance of vegetables. It does have proteins in it, and it had oils in it. But you know what, if you get, look, I love a Mediterranean diet, but I can't say that that's what we're eating at the moment. But there's some really dolmades I absolutely love for some crazy reason. That's how it is at the moment. So the question is, develop an innate sense of internal wisdom. You have this little alarm bell system in all of us when we know there's danger. And what happens, of course, is that we get alarm bells ringing when something doesn't feel right, sound right, or even taste right. You're putting something to your mouth, and you've got to ask yourself in that instant. And this is how you begin to do it. It's a check mechanism that allows you to say, no, thanks, but no thanks. And that's part of the unsubscription process that we're talking about with regard to going to the farmer's market and just getting the organic product or spray-free product. They've got a spray-free certification program going on in the Noosa Shire here, for instance, which means that that's another racket, that the farmers aren't paying, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 grand, depending on how big they are, to a body that actually provides them with organic status. So even at that level, the farmers are being penalised, which is absolutely out of control. There's another question here.
There's some really good comments. Peter's saying that his motivation was to change his diet or die. Pleased he changed. We are too.
Peter, it's as simple as that. It is. I mean, if I hadn't changed my diet 10 years ago, well, I'd already changed my diet, but I actually needed to ramp it up even further because I thought at that time that what I was eating was going to be okay, but it wasn't. I had to go fully raw vegan. Now we eat some cooked food, but my system has settled down beautifully. But that fully raw at that particular time, fruit in the morning, greens with flavours and things like that, saved my life, along with the green papaya powder too. And we haven't talked about the green papaya powder, so if anybody's got gut issues, go to the Gutfixx with 2x's.com website and get your gut working first, because the gut is even being destroyed by chemicals. The antibiotics fed to us as humans, babies, this destroys the gut biome. And of course there's money in all of this sort of stuff. The Nexium destroys the gut biome. The Lipitor destroys the gut biome. It's a statin which also has been shown to contribute to heart attacks. So do your research on all of this stuff. You do not need any of that stuff if you're eating well. Yeah. But I'm not here to diagnose anybody. You go and make your own judgment calls on all of this, which is really important.
So Ray's talking about the Mediterranean diet. The problem with that now is the fish is very high in heavy metal, especially mercury. Mercury
contamination is phenomenal. And then look at the radiation in the Pacific coming from Fukushima, which comes in a band right across to the United States of America, and you would not be eating tuna out of the Pacific. Seriously. No. So all of those things, you know, we've been given a wake-up call here. You know, I
think there's too much. This is the other thing. You look at the bigger picture. You've got oceans that are polluted. The fish are dying. Fish are ending up on the shores, and no reason. Birds falling out the sky. All this crazy stuff going on because there's a weather modification program, as they call it, weather modification. Believe that one if you like. There'll be an element of truth in that, but
that's another story. But they're called chemtrails, by the way. Fortunately, we haven't seen any around here for a while.
For a few weeks.
But hey.
But I remember in Simonton, back in Scotland, coming out and finding the pathway just covered in these tiny little, almost like a styrofoam ball, but it was pinky colour, salmon pink colour, and it was squishy. I thought, what is this? And I swept it up And a couple of days later, it was all over the place again. So it must have come out of the air. It must have come out of an aircraft. It was all around our street that we were living in. I should have taken it and got it lab tested, but I didn't. And that's one of the things that we all need to do, is speak up a bit more. And even when we're seeing the doctor and the doctor's prescribing a specific drug, we need to ask, what are the side effects of this? Would you be taking that if you were in this situation? Because certainly with the situation I'm in, I have asked the doctor and the consultant all the way along challenging questions. And it's been very interesting to see the response. Now, so you have the right to question. You have the right to ask. And one of the things we spoke last week about the online course, about the Achieving Health Excellence Basics course. And in that course, there are some very simple signals that you can see just by looking at sticking your tongue out, looking in the mirror in the morning, having a look at the coating on your tongue, your eyes, your nails, your hair. That's the kind of thing. The doctor, when I was a little girl growing up in Scotland, the doctor, the first thing he did when Mum took you in there to say, she's not well, you know, put your tongue out. They looked in the whites of your eyes, they checked your ears, you know, and then they sounded your chest and things like that. It wasn't automatically, you know, writing a script.
So they were just detecting inflammation in the body.
Yeah, but the doctor, I've never had a doctor in my adult life ask me to do that, stick your tongue out.
No.
Never. And yet we've seen some pictures of horrific tongues that show clearly, you know, major disease in the body. So don't be afraid to ask the questions of your doctor and your money managers and your local grocer. Because if we don't ask these questions and we don't demand change, then we won't get it. We'll just get more of the same stuff.
Gosha's mentioned that Wei Shen's mentioned the antibiotics in especially industrially farmed animals and fish. And there are some horror stories coming out of Tasmania with the salmon farming down there, and also the harvesting of wild tuna and at a certain length, and then fattening them up as well. I know there was a major program in the Gulf of St Vincent off Adelaide where there was a crowd actually harvesting small immature tuna and bringing them back and putting them in nets, and of course they have to be fed. And what they want to do is fatten them up as quickly as possible so they can get to market. And you know the story about chickens. I mean, chicken is one of the worst meats that you can eat from a commercial point of view, because it's pumped full of hormones. And did you know that the number of chicken, so if it's a number 2 or number 3 or number 4 or number 5 or number 6 chicken, is actually the number of weeks that it took to grow that? Yeah, that's right. Which is horrifying. Yeah. So look, for all of you, I know, just recognizing some of the names here, you're all pretty astute people. You just have to begin to
talk about the honey, though. With the program we saw the other night about honey, stated that 90% of honey that's on the market today worldwide is adulterated honey. It's been blended, and so much of it has been shipped in from China. We started talking about that at the beginning, but although there are tariffs, the US government have put heavy tariffs on Chinese goods, and obviously the Donald's going to put more on by the sound of it. They found ways to circumvent that by shipping the product to Thailand or Malaysia or Vietnam, and then going in that way, because what they said was that they knew how much locally grown honey there was on the market, and they knew how much was being consumed, and it was something like 400 times more was being consumed than was actually created. So that raised the alarm bells, and the DEA and the EPA and whoever, all the different agencies, all the alphabet agencies, the CIA, no doubt, the FBI, went looking for these the issue. So honey is something that we choose not to eat anyway, right? Because we follow a vegan diet, but a lot of people do, and that's fine, that's their choice. But please make sure that the honey that you're buying is locally grown and harvested, so that at least, because they were putting chemicals in to make it.
Antibiotics, basically, to preserve the health and integrity of the bees. And this is what they found in China, is just Chinese honey, high levels of antibiotics, but also mixed with corn syrups and other sweeteners and things like that.
Fascinating
Yeah.
program to watch on
Yeah.
Netflix. So that's Rotten and Dirty
She
Money.
talking about, well, not rotten, but Jeannie says, what about raw chicken necks causing paralysis in dogs who are fed them? Look, my wee Toasty, my ex, she used to feed him chicken necks, and he would suffer from seizures. And unfortunately, that's ultimately what killed him. But for the 4 or 5 years that I had him, he was a vegan, and he had hemp protein, and the seizures actually slowed down. They began to minimize, but occasionally they would creep through. So I took him off that altogether, at the end of the day. Dogs can, I mean, this flies in the face of conventional thinking, but dogs don't need to eat meat. They can eat vegetables with protein in the form of hemp. Toasty's bone was a carrot and other things.
Or a courgette.
Or a courgette.
Zucchini.
He loves
You love
zucchinis. He loves zucchinis, which he could actually
So some really good comments tonight.
So the other one is, do we use a sweetener? Just a little bit of coconut palm syrup?
Coconut palm syrup or a little bit of maple syrup, but since watching that program, we're now concerned about buying maple syrup because it's not cheap. It's like $8 or $9 for a little bottle of maple syrup, but it's low GI. And again, the small farmers in Canada are being impacted by the greed of the Federation of Maple Syrup Growers.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
They've actually artificially held up the price of maple syrup by stockpiling drums and drums of the syrup, and the small farmers, they're just not getting paid the way they should do. At the end of the day, if you're sitting on $100 million worth of maple syrup, then people get twitchy, and whenever there's that sort of money around, people go weird. In fact, I've noticed that.
So there's a lot of people talking about the system collapsing, and this would appear to be part of this exposure of all the corruption and the corruption and the deceit and the theft and the criminality. I forgot what I was going to say now. You just finished me.
Yeah, I just wanted to think about that.
Everybody's talking about that. So what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Well, again, being aware is number one. So being selective about what we read, what we listen to, what we feed our mind with. And for me personally, it's been what I've been looking for very recently has been some peace of mind, because I do get agitated, I get worried and concerned about this, because I think about the next generation that's coming along and the damage that's been done. But there's a lot more good things happening that we don't hear about, and I think there's a lot more good than bad, but we only ever hear about the bad. So we have to be aware of what's going on and then make those changes that we can make using our own purchasing power and our own choices as to what we're going to put into our body.
Unsubscribe. Ed's just mentioned that he's giving Leo, his dog, who I've met, the green papaya powder as well, and he's doing really well. He's lost 5 kilos since he started using it. And toasted with some green papaya as well. It just helps to generate the gut motion so that they can break down proteins particularly. And a lot of these dogs are hypersensitive, through breeding and through various other things. And even despite all the love that we give them, sometimes they get ill. But the green papaya is really great for helping their guts to work, but also to remove any real bad infestations of parasites. Same for humans. Great for gut, great for removing real infestations of parasites.
The program on Netflix on peanuts.
That was fascinating.
I think it was in the Rotten series.
Yeah.
And watch the one on peanuts. It talks about allergies. Fantastic information. And peanuts gets a really bad rap. Apparently it's changing now. But there's some really good contributors to that program. And I think that's good news that it's actually coming out on that. But the allergies aspect of it, one doctor who really specialised in this, turned out her daughter ended up being allergic to something, some kind of food, some kind of nut or tree nut. So I think it might have been a tree nut, not a peanut.
Yeah.
But anyway, she had a vested interest, even though this had happened much further down the line. She was already studying it. But she talked about the parasites and the worms in her body. And of course, we've talked a lot about that recently, haven't we? So there is a place for these things, but when they overtake and they compromise the gut flora, then you've got a problem. So we've got to make sure that we've got.
Can we? We're sort of getting through now. We're going to go a few minutes left.
Right,
Can we actually have a little announcement? Do you want to go ahead and post the link?
So what we're doing, part of the work that we're doing with that is, again, in response to requests from our friends and customers, is putting together a program, and we've got a gorgeous Gosha Kachowski. I hope I said that properly, Gosha. Kachewski on tonight, and we know that some of you already know Gosha because we've interviewed her, and we'll be getting her back on soon. Now, both Scott and Gosha and Pam Siddons from BEST, the Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique, we've put together a program. It's a little mini retreat. And Wei Shen, you better be listening, and I hope you're free this weekend. So we've got, the first weekend is coming up next month on the 10th and 11th of March. And we've found a beautiful spot to host this two-day little workshop retreat. But it's really more relaxation and complete support and nurturing. So part of the program.
Do you want to post that link right now while I just have a little natter?
Part of the program will be body balancing sessions with Pam that will just help to kind of give people an understanding of how emotions get locked in the body and how easy it is to shift them. And it's using kinesiology as a kind of barometer.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. In fact, the work that I've done with Pam over the last 18 months, 2 years now, has literally made such a massive difference to my life. And what else have we got coming?
We've got live blood analysis with Gosha. Now, we've spoken to Gosha a few times about this because we want everyone to experience this. It's something I tried a few years ago, and I was fascinated by it. So we actually get to see a little pinprick or a sample of blood gets put onto a little slide and then put under the microscope, and then we can see our blood cells moving about. They're still alive. And
put the link up, and then
put the link up,
because there's people hanging
out. You're hanging out.
I know. Okay. Look, we've got an early bird special on this. It's going to be a great weekend. We've got a vegan food, and I'm working with Andy Pether from the Live Food Cafes at Mullaney because I can't do it all myself. So he's going to do.
And I think Andy was on.
Lunch on Saturday and Sunday. So it's 2 full days up until 4 o'clock on Sunday. And I'll do the food on Saturday night along with a lead-in class that will give you some ideas on how to prepare simple food, and also to really get to understand how you can use some of the recipes from these great books here. And what else have we got? I mean, it's beautiful. We were up there at the location yesterday, and it's really lovely. Quality furnishings, 4-star. Really nice. The Karen Anderson, the owner, and her husband, reckon they can get 5-star for the nature of this retreat at Witter, which is just through the other side of Mullaney. Absolutely brilliant. So we have the link has now gone up.
Yeah.
And registration is open right now. We've got the early bird special until the 21st of February, which it's 21st of March. 21st of February, and that's $150 off basically for the weekend. You get books. The other thing, do you want to go back to the list?
Okay, so everyone, now there's only going to be 15 places, so it's a small group, and that will allow us to give everybody lots of one-on-one time as well. So there'll be time to talk to Scott, there'll be talks, demonstrations, obviously the delicious food, and then everyone will be having their sessions with Gosha and Pam. There's also everyone in attendance will get access to Scott's online courses, and there'll be a 7-day meal planner to take away as well. So much more. There's 2 beautiful swimming pools there as well. One's heated, one isn't, but I think at this time of the year we won't be needing any heated swimming pools.
But we've got some surprises. I said to Claire today, come up with some surprises for the lucky 15. This could be the best investment you've made in your life at this particular time, and it's all about timing. And I never put anything in the way of my own healing. If there was any resistance towards anything, I would ask, where is the resistance coming from? 99% of the time it was from a perception of lack and conditioned belief systems. And conditioned belief systems and lack, or perception of lack, really go hand in hand. So if you're in a position to actually really step out of your comfort zone and participate in this with us, I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that your level of change will be palpable and measurable over the space of the coming months following this retreat. It is effectively an introductory retreat, so we were looking to have, because Carol Baines has asked, we're going to have some more later on, depending on the success of this first one, and it's all about patronage. I mean, if there is a market there from people who are interested in getting information about what we're involved in, then we will be more than happy to organise these things. But if everybody puts their hands up, you know, quick to enthuse but slow to participate, then we'll just have to pack up and go away and just focus on our online stuff and work with people who are willing, open and ready to do this. But this is local, okay? This is on the Sunshine Coast. And it'd be nice to actually do something, Carol, you know, south of Perth, you know, or even in the Hunter, somewhere in Victoria, as time goes by. But the most important thing is we've teamed up with both Pam Siddons and Gosha, two fabulous people, and the host, as I said, of the Jacaranda Cottages is just right with us on this. So it's going to be relatively easy, and we've done all the marketing and set everything up today. But have a look at the link, and Bob's your uncle. What else have you said there?
Now, Marlon's asking about you didn't give the price. Do you want to give the price?
Yeah, it's...
So the cost of the 2-day event, including the accommodation, all food and the sessions, and all the bonuses, is $6.95, and the early bird offer, which will run to the 21st of February, it will be a saving of $150, so that'll be $545. So you want to get in now. And the reason we've put that early bird date on is because we want to get everything, we need to get the catering and everything organised and all our bookwork and everything like that well in advance. So you've got about 8 or 9 days to take advantage of that. But go to the website with that link. We will be sending out an email with full information on what's involved at the retreat, and we hope as many of you as possible will take advantage of that. Now,
you also get the benefit of ongoing relationship from a retreat. It's not just a retreat and then, you know, the organisers forget about you. You're all part of, you come into the family basically of awareness and understanding, and there'll be mechanisms set up post-retreats to be able to continue to send you information and allow you to actually continue to ask questions and respond positively. We're just not going to have a retreat and leave people hanging, which is often the case. It is not about that. It is really about setting in motion the wheels of awareness, and we're here to support you to do that, along with Gosha and Pam.
So if it's someone that's struggling with illness and has been for a long time, then this is a really good supportive environment to come along and just have your questions answered. If it's someone, if you're already healthy but you just want to know more about the benefits of a plant-based diet, then fantastic. We've got a secret recipe that we're going to be producing on the day. It's my secret though, so I can't tell you about it. I'm not even telling Scott. Now, Jeannie's asked, just before we go, I know that we've gone over time, but Jeannie's asked about the bank story. She's been waiting on that since last week. How can I do this in less than 60 seconds? We should have started this.
Well, we can actually go into the depth associated with your personal backstory next week, but you know, where do you how long's a piece of rope when it comes to talking about what's going on with the banks?
Well, just very briefly, if you have to go, you have to go, and thank you for being here tonight. But if you want to hang on for a few minutes, I'll try and be as concise as possible. Imagine Clare trying to be quick at saying something. No. Tom's just joined as well, which is lovely. Hello, Tom. So I've got 2 brothers on from Scotland tonight. That's lovely.
Isn't it nice to have your family supporting you in this environment? That's brilliant.
Great. And Tom was here last year at this time. Anyway. Tom, it's absolutely melting. Very hot couple of days. So you wouldn't enjoy it today or yesterday. So Marlon, the banking story was about 10 years ago. I was involved in a multi-million-pound property deal in Scotland, and it had been quite a roller coaster for me for a few months, where I had two major banks came to me offering money to fund this big multi-million-pound housing development. It was going to be 3 houses that would have been selling for just over $1 million each, and £1 million each rather, and it was on a lovely golf course in the east coast of Scotland, just outside, not far from Edinburgh, about 6 minutes by helicopter to St Andrews golf course. So there you go, it was kind of high-end stuff. But what happened was in January 2008, this started in 2007, the negotiations, and it was unbelievable. It was I could make a film about this journey, but it was quite stressful as well, because I had to decide between 2 big banks, the Royal Bank of Scotland and Clydesdale Bank, who are part of NAB here in Australia. And I made the decision to go with one bank. And in January, when we were just getting ready to finalise it, or waiting on the go-ahead from the bank to release the money to start the build in February, the bank, we got a signal from the bank that they just weren't quite sure. Everything was good with the project, but they weren't quite sure how the property market was going to go, and therefore they would be holding off giving us the green light on the first tranche of money. So I had a massive shift, one of those big tsunamis in my gut, and I thought, and he was sitting at my dining table in my home in Scotland, and I thought, something's wrong, but he was like, oh, it'll be fine, I'm sure it'll be fine, but right now we're just going to hold off. And I thought, this was 6 months before the GFC, before actually the crash became public. It was already happening. They knew about it. Just a few people at the top that know about this. The majority of people who work in banks are innocent bank, ordinary people that are just going out to do a day's work. But there are certain individuals at the top who knew that this was happening. And so what happened was, fast forward to June, July, they pulled out. They said they weren't going to fund. Now, we'd already committed and bought the land, and it was
after chasing you.
Yeah, and we spent £500,000 on the land. So there was a lot of money to lose, and I was absolutely beside myself. I thought, what the heck is going on? Well, that episode then led me down a rabbit hole that I did not find comfortable at all. I cried for about 9 months because I had other people invested with me, and I felt very responsible. Thankfully, those people were extremely gracious and knew that this was out with my control, but and they're still friends to this day. But it was a horrendous thing to happen. But it forced me to look at the monetary system in general, and that's when I realised that money isn't real. That we work with, the money that we've got in our wallet is called fiat currency, and most people, well, maybe they don't know. I assume that everybody knows. If I know, everybody knows, but maybe not. Fiat currency means that it has no intrinsic value, right? It was taken off it had previously been pegged to the gold standard, so you could always, it did have a value, right? It was valued against the metals prices. So in the 60s, I think it was Nixon took it off, unpegged it from the gold standard because he needed to print more money for the Vietnam War. Right? So there's connections here. So we've got money, we've got war, we've got corruption, we've got food, we've got the pharmaceutical drug. So I started to watch documentaries, and I came across, you watch one thing and it leads you to another, and it leads you to another.
The upshot was that you lost everything.
Well, I lost everything. I now have a very clear understanding of how that monetary system works, and it is collapsing. So the debt is based on debt, so it's a debt economy, globally, worldwide, so we can't get out of it. And the only way to keep everything going is to print more money. So now it's getting to crisis point. And we've got the introduction of the cryptocurrencies, which are a much safer way to transact business. Now, the good news about that is and again, you've got a lot of divisions. Some people think it's great, some people think it's a scam, blah, blah, blah. But Brisbane Airport is going to be the first airport in the world who will accept Bitcoin. So that is good news, because it means that the bankers can't control that. They may be able to, the governments will probably regulate it, and that might not be a bad thing, but the bankers will not be able to control it. So we're going to see over this coming year, I think, is when things are really ramping up now, because everybody I speak to, even my lovely dentist, they know. And the people who don't know exactly what's going on know that something's going on and it needs to change. And that's what we wanted to talk about, that awareness, that feeling that you've got in your gut. It is something that's happening. It's not something to be afraid of, but it is something to be aware of. And talk to one another about it. Get information. If you're not sure, if you want more information, ask me. I'll send you all the links all day long.
Wei Shen's just put up a whole lot of smiley faces in response to your remark there. If you're looking for a great vegan dentist, Wei Shen is the lass.
Wei Shen's the lady.
Yeah. Edge just mentioned that the USA borrows $1 million every minute, and yeah, I mean they're budgeting for $1 trillion budget deficit in this budget that they're trying to get.
And the banks are moving into the crypto market now. So Ripple is banks. That's the big.
Stay away from Ripple.
Well, you can buy them if you like, but I won't be. Carol doesn't understand what Bitcoin is. It's virtual currency, like our fiat currency. It's all virtual. It's all numbers on a screen. But with the with Bitcoin and other coins now, there's hundreds of them on the market now. These are called cryptocurrencies, and it's all digital. So you can transact business. You could buy a product, or you could buy a course with a merchant that already has a Bitcoin account or a Litecoin account, and you would transact money that way.
But the thing is that it's actually done on what's called a blockchain. Okay, so it's a very secure environment. And every transaction that occurs using a cryptocurrency goes through this series of ledgers that basically are all transparent, so you can actually see what's going on the whole time.
Right. So Paul's saying that Gibraltar is the first country in the world to regulate cryptocurrencies. So that's already happened, Paul.
To regulate to the point that they want to not participate?
No, they have to. They can't stop it.
Can't stop it. No, you won't stop it.
So it's a way for people to take. To be empowered again. It's our choice, and that's a good message to send to those people who are involved in the corrupt behaviours, because those individuals, yeah, the US dollar is dead, totally, but those individuals, again, remember, the greed is an indication of lack, which means pain in that individual's body, mind or soul somewhere.
And then if you get a whole lot of these individuals in the same room and they're running your friggin' monetary system, we are stuffed. And that's exactly what's happened. We are stuffed, but we are not stuffable.
So it's up to us to change it. They won't change it. They will not change it for our benefit. We have to change it. So the more we demand and the more questions we ask and the more we make different choices about how we're going to transact business, the better, the quicker it will change. It will be uncomfortable for some, but it will be better in the long run. So
but any transition is uncomfortable. It's like moving from an all-meat diet to a vegan diet. I mean, that causes mayhem for the body, it causes mayhem for the mind. But that's why we're here, to actually help people through that. And also
the energetic thing, vibrational thing, it's another topic which we could go on about for hours. We'll maybe do that next week. But from an energetic perspective, far better to pray for those people rather than condemn them. I think there's a phrase in the Bible somewhere that says, condemn the sin but not the sinner. And I think that's always stuck at the back of my mind. There's another great Bible quote that I can't remember the chapter and verse, but it says, do not put your trust in nobles nor the son of earthling man, because it doesn't even belong to him to direct his own step. So watch from the sidelines, be aware of what's going on, and just protect yourself as much as possible. Eat clean food.
Yeah. And Carol, with regard to learning more about cryptocurrencies, ask the Google God, what is cryptocurrency? And you'll get a Wikipedia response, and just start doing your own due diligence. It's really important. And anything we're talking about tonight basically is all free information. It's available. The profits of the pharmaceutical companies, they're leading drugs. That's all available online. All that information is online. The whole meat, vegan thing, the diet thing, depending on which way you want to go, the benefits of Mediterranean vis-a-vis not, all that information is available. And There's some great people out there at the moment. And I actually organised to talk to one of them, but he's moving house at the moment, and I'm just waiting for a time. And he's turned into a rather interesting guy, and I don't know if any of you know Cliff High, who actually runs a program called Predictive Linguistics. So he's actually using software to predict the emotion of society across a whole lot of media outlets and making predictions, because he fundamentally says that we're all psychic, and that essentially what's happening is we're already thinking ahead, days, weeks and months, sometimes minutes, days, weeks and months, about the most beneficial outcome, not specifically for ourselves in a selfish context, but selfless context, because that's what happens on a subconscious level. And we'll get to talk to him at some point, but he's a fascinating guy. There's so much going on there now which is accelerating us 50, 60, 70 years ahead, not just from a technological point of view, but also from a social and cultural point of view, and all this stuff is being turned on its head. And the diet nutrition thing is just one aspect of this, but I tell you what, you get your nutrition packed, you get that organized, and then everything else will begin to follow on comfortably. You won't find it so difficult, basically, to cope with the changes.
Yeah, so Sue's saying the funny guy with the long red hair called Bitcoin, the financial vegan currency. We love him. What's his name? CT somewhere or other. He's a comedian, the American guy that wears
the ginger hair. Yeah,
ginger hair. He's lovely. He's really,
no, it's about
really
change. You know, it's about the prepper type people who are going to the bush. Where were we yesterday? Kenilworth Way. We're up the back. We came bound through after visiting the location for the retreat. That's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. We came through Witter and went down the back road past Crystal Waters, Conondale, and into Kenilworth. And of course, all the houses are on property, and they're all got solar panels
and tank water, and
they're
kind of off the grid.
So they're totally off the grid.
Yeah.
Claire's mentioned, he said how wonderful the both of you look tonight.
Thank you very much. It must be my new lipstick.
It must be my rouge. I don't know what I've got.
It's the heat.
It's the heat, yeah.
Paul says all currencies are a belief system, are belief systems. Without faith in the systems can't work. You're spot on, Paul. Totally agree. Not often Paul and I agree, but we're agreeing on
it. No,
we don't agree on a lot.
Michelle Douglas says no Spears. So
yes,
is that part of
Thingy Spears. That's his name, Spears, is it?
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, DJ Spears. Yeah.
It's not DJ. It's something. We'll go and look it up.
He's moved to America with his girlfriend, and he's doing stuff over there now. She's an American lass. Right. But he's a character. He talks about the yoginis and the vegans and all sorts of people. He's a vegan himself, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think he is.
A JP. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
JP
I'm going to be
Spears.
able to sleep tonight without knowing that. Brilliant. Yeah, I think he must be a vegan. He just takes the proverbial out of himself.
He tries to wrench the Michael from our back pockets, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Take the mickey out of us. All right, wonderful people. Thanks very much indeed. There is more to talk about on everything we have touched on tonight. We'll do that again next week. We'll just continue. I'll just take another chapter from the book here. And the next chapter, by the way, is Dark Forces. And I'm intimately familiar with the nature and work of dark forces in regards to actually maintaining faith that Tom mentioned. If you have faith in something, or if you participate in the consensual belief system, then you need some sort of structure to keep you stuck there. And I know about the role of media very, very closely. So next week we'll talk about dark forces, all right? And please do avail yourself of the links to the retreat.
I was going to actually, I was going to publish that. So I'll just publish the, there's a lot of information about the event. I've just published it now, and I'll put up a poster. Go and have a look at that. It's on the Scott Mathias Raw page, so when you've finished here, it should be there. It should be showing for you. And if you've got any questions about it, just drop us a private message or ask a question on the event posting, and we'll be happy to answer that. We'd love to see as many of you as possible there.
So we might go and pick up another episode from the series called Rotten on Netflix. I don't know what the next one is about, but yeah, do go and have a look. Edify yourself. That's for you, Ed. But no, edify, educate yourself. Self-learning leads to, self-education leads to self-healing. And that's across the board. We can heal ourselves of so many things right now. Anything else to add? No further questions? Yeah, good on you. Great mob.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being with us tonight, eh? And
really good comments.
really good comments, really good questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Anne's just joined, but Anne is another friend from Scotland. Anne, you'll be able to replay this in just a few minutes. As soon as we finish, the replay will be up within 2 or 3 minutes. So you'll be able to watch
so
it
once
again.
we stop the live broadcast, just a few moments till it rejigs itself, and then you can go into the archives. Really cool.
Great.
This is exciting,
Cool.
eh?
We'll
All
see
right.
you next week.
Good on you guys.
Bye.
Bye.